Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Press TV's Top 5. And now Israel clears its troops of any wrongdoing in one of the bloodiest incidents of the 2014 war on Gaza. Israeli army says it's closing the inquiry into an attack which killed 135 Palestinian civilians in the war. It also says that a criminal investigation is unnecessary. Now, according to rights organization Amnesty International, there is strong proof Israel committed war crimes during the offensive on Gaza. Amnesty says Israeli forces heavily bombarded the region without warning while masses of people were out on the streets. The Israeli army launched a large-scale attack after accusing Palestinians of kidnapping its soldiers. Now joining us out of Ontario, Canada for more of the stories, Mr. Edward Corrigan, international human rights lawyer. Hello, Mr. Corrigan. It's a pleasure to have you back on the program. Your thoughts on Tel Aviv conducting this probe on itself and deciding that it's unnecessary to continue it further?
Well, of course, it's a farce that they would be investigating themselves when they committed what most people consider a war crime, killing over 100 Palestinian civilians. So that in itself is a joke. But I believe that Israel thinks that they're sort of empowered and emboldened because Donald Trump is what he's saying about the Palestinians, the blanket support he's given for Israel. And of course, if there is a problem at the Security Council, the United States and probably Britain and France would veto it, even though Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the United Nations, and a lot of Israeli organizations have pointed out the fact that a lot of these are war crimes. In fact, even Israeli soldiers who were involved as snipers shooting unarmed Palestinian civilians who were just protesting against the siege that the Gaza enclave is under, the fact that they're being denied fresh water, medicine, food, the whole range of things. It really is a monstrous application of collective punishment on the Palestinians, which of course it's the old and the very young that suffer the most. But Israel has been really doing this for decades, but for the most part they managed to control the narrative so that most people weren't really addressing these issues, or they would be distracted by something else. And Israel said, oh, they kidnapped our soldiers. Well, Israel has, I don't know, sometimes they have 6,000 or more Palestinians in prison. Many of them have not been charged, even have children, women. They just recently imprisoned a Palestinian for writing a poem. So these facts rarely come out in the North American and Western press, and therefore people say, oh, Israel is responding because Hezbollah or maybe Hamas captured an Israeli soldier, and but nobody looks at the fact that there's thousands of soldiers or prisoners that are being held by Israel, and on a factual basis, these are clearly war crimes, absolutely. And our investigation and gathering evidence with regard to Israel's attacks on Gaza. But starving the population, denying it medicine, attacking these ships that are trying to break the siege in international water, then beating them up, shooting them, doing different things, which they've done. They even killed a number of people on a Turkish ship, which caused a big crisis between Israel and Turkey. But the Israelis think they can do whatever they want, and nobody's going to hold them accountable. And until the Arab community gets its act together, the Palestinians get better organized, and the international community starts to apply real sanctions and take action against Israel, the Israelis simply laugh at the world's face and think it's very funny.
But even back in 2014, when this took place, and Tel Aviv was accused of bombing and targeting infrastructure, civilian infrastructure. Once that summer was over, I remember the UN tried to send in an investigative team in there to actually probe possible war crimes taking place. Tel Aviv would not even give them entry permits into Gaza, wouldn't even give them visas to get in onto Palestinian territories anywhere. So, I mean, how is that okay? How does that get overlooked? How does that get brushed under the carpet?
Well, as I said, the Israelis do what they want, and they provide these weak justifications for it. But it doesn't make sense. And the North American press in particular does not do any sort of investigative reporting or even looking at the basic facts. the information is readily available on Skype, on the internet, but it's extremely rare that the main papers, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, the papers in Canada, Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, on occasion they will. But for the most part, that gets lost, and we're constantly being bombarded with those poor Israelis, why won't those Arabs leave them alone? And the fact that Israel's like the 4th or 5th ranked power in the world because the United States gives them, billions and billions of dollars of arms and money, and the Western powers, partly out of guilt for what they did and what they didn't do during the Holocaust and the Second World War, they keep pumping up Israel. So Israel's a little tiny country on steroids. It has the best weapons available, and you have them playing games and getting the Arabs to fight against each other, whether it's Qatar versus Saudi Arabia, or Sunni versus Shia, or Arabs attacking Syria. It's all a game where you get the Arabs to fight, and the Americans and the Israelis just sit back and laugh at the Arabs. And the Arabs really need to open their eyes and get their act together. I think that's a big part of the problem. Once you get that solved, then you can start addressing other things. But until Israel starts to feel economic and political pain, they're not going to change their tactics. In fact, the most promising thing is, Jewish Voice for Peace, independent Jewish voices in Canada and in England, and a lot of, there's tens of thousands of people that marched in Tel Aviv against this Jewish nation state law, which clearly officially makes Israel an apartheid state. So it's a lot of this action that's occurring within the Jewish community and also within the Palestinian community, who are suffering terribly. But most of the other Arab countries and even Muslim countries, with a few exceptions, Iran is one, are not doing what they need to do. If every Arab country, every Muslim said we're going to stop buying American goods, you would see a very quick change in the attitude of the Americans. If every Muslim country was boycotting them, and every Arab country was boycotting them, and then a lot of other countries like the BRICS, Israel, or United States, is fighting. They're picking a fight with Russia, picking a fight with China, Pakistan, Turkey.
I want to thank you.
The world divided into people who either trade with the United States or don't.
We're all out of time there, Mr. Edward Corrigan. Always appreciate your perspective on the program, sir, out of Ontario. Mr. Edward Corrigan, international human rights lawyer, joining us.